Hi guys, and welcome to Preliminary Chemistry, and this is topic 3, water, and video number 2, water on the Earth. In the last video we looked at water as a solvent and why it is such regarded as a universal solvent, and in this video we're going to look at the state of water, where water exists, and again why it's such an important thing to be looking at. In fact, a reason why we're going to spend a quarter of our preliminary course just looking at water. So the really interesting thing about water is that water is the only substance that we know of that can exist naturally in all three states on the Earth simultaneously. It exists as a solid, ice at the poles permanently, and also in alpine regions. We know that there's certain places around the Earth where it snows at different times in the year. And this is solid ice. This is solid water or ice. Liquid water is probably the most common. 70% of the surface of the Earth is liquid water, and that's locked up in oceans, rivers, and streams. But we also have water as a gas. That is water vapor in the air, and this is what gives us measures of humidity. When we look at the spheres, if you remember from our first topic on the chemical Earth, we looked at the 4 different spheres, and we started to look at some of the different and important chemicals, both elements and compounds, that were present in each of those spheres. So if we quickly revisit those, we find that in the lithosphere, water exists as surface water, both in oceans sitting on top of the crust, and also as rivers and streams. But it also exists underground, artesian basins and aquifers and things like that exist well within the crust. The hydrosphere is the sphere that contains water, so that obviously contains water, and that is rivers and oceans and so on. But water is very important in the biosphere as well. It's crucial to life, and it's crucial for several reasons, not just because it can be a raw material for processes like photosynthesis. And it's also present in the atmosphere, as we mentioned before, in the form of water vapor and also clouds. And as I make this video at the moment, I can hear the rain that gets periodically louder, so you may actually hear some of that during the course of this recording. Why is water so significant? Well, there's a couple of reasons why, and those reasons have been split into different categories, so we need to talk about each one in just a little bit of detail. The first of these is cells. Now, the actual structure of the cell itself is held together within the cytoplasm that is predominantly water. So there's a lot of different substances that may be dissolved in the cytoplasm, so it itself will be a solution. But the amount of water in the cytoplasm that's pushing against the cell membrane and the cell wall, if it's a plant or a fungus, can create turgidity or turgid cells, where the cells are full of water and retaining a very strong shape. This actually is a useful property that some plants use in order to regulate the water gains or losses through the surface of the leaves, and also gas exchange through structures which we call stomates or stomata. And water is very, very important for this process because it actually allows those stomates to open and allow water exchange when there's plenty of water for the plant. When there isn't, the cells become flaccid, they close in on themselves, and they actually close over those pores. Water is also an important raw material, particularly for the process of photosynthesis, which is carried out by green plants, and in cells that contain chloroplasts, we find that water is a very important raw material for the production of sugars. In aquatic habitats, water is fairly obvious here. Water is the medium in which they live. It's also something that is less extreme than terrestrial. In terrestrial habitats, things like temperature can fluctuate through quite large extremes, not only daily temperature ranges, but also seasonal, the difference between, say, the coldest day in winter and the hottest day in summer. Aquatic environments tend to be a more stable environments, so they don't fluctuate over the same temperature ranges, and they also tend to hold their heat for much longer. And that has to do with the specific heat capacity of water, and that's something that we'll look at a little later in this topic. Water is also an agent of weathering, both as a liquid and also as solid ice. So we find that liquid water can wear away at the rocks as it travels downstream, but also as solid ice, as it can actually carve or gouge its way through the rocks of the mountains, creating different sorts of valleys. And we've got V-shaped and U-shaped valleys, often forming as a consequence of the action of water in either of its states. Water is also an important resource for life. So humans themselves, or ourselves, can rely on water. A very large portion of our bodies are water, but we use it for so many different things. We use it again as a raw material. We use it for transport systems. So it's present in the blood, for example. It has to be liquid in order to move substances around through our body. It's also used in temperature regulation. So when you get very hot, if you've been exercising, you will perspire, and that perspiration is water that's designed to help cool your body as it evaporates away. So water is critically important to all of life on Earth. It's the medium in which some of them live, and it's also a very important component of life itself, and how life is maintained within a range of different, particularly multicellular organisms. So what are some of the ways in which water is so important to human life? Well, there's quite a number of ways. We drink it, we wash in it, we use it for our recreation, so we might swim, we might fish, so we gather our food from our water. There's a whole range of different ways in which we might use it. Not just in the actual food that lives in the water. We may use it for food preparation. We may do things like irrigation. So if you're on a farm or an agricultural region, then you may want to water the crops to help them to grow. This may also be important for watering livestock. Animals that we may be keeping for food or for their ability to work on farms, or just in our own homes. It can also be used as a method of transport. So water can be used to move you around from one place to another, and even things like generation of electricity through something like hydroelectricity. This is just a small list, and I'm sure you can come up with a few other things that you can possibly add to this question of why water is so important, and that's why we spent a little bit of time talking about it today. Thanks for watching.